Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have an update with Dustin Perry, CEO of Kingfisher. It's been a while since we've gotten an update, so looking forward to hearing what's new. It sounds like there's a lot of new things at Kingfisher. This session will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can find them on the company's presentation on their website. And I think the format's going to be a 15-20-minute update followed by Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to input them in the question box at the bottom of your screen. With that out of the way, hi, Dustin. Nice to see you.
Morning, Deborah.
Nice office.
Thank you. In a warehouse in Squamish.
Perfect. So it's been a while since you've given an update. So looking forward to hearing what's new and what you've got planned for the season.
Yep. I will share my screen and get into it.
Awesome.
Okay, I'll cover the highlights of Kingfisher. So we are a BC-focused company. We've put together one of the largest junior held land positions in the Golden Triangle now. So with our recent acquisition of the LGM project, which I'll get into, we're now sitting at 630 square kilometers adjacent to Highway 37. So the Highway 37, the Stewart-Cassiar Highway, and the Northwest Transmission Line pass through the eastern boundary of our original Highway 37 project. And the Galore Creek Access Road passes through the southern boundary of our new LGM project, which is contiguous with Highway 37. So what we've done here is we've put together a very large trend or district of porphyry copper gold and epithermal gold silver prospective ground that includes several historical discoveries, a lot of prospective ground, and there's actually also a large area prospective for SK Creek deposits, which hasn't seen a lot of work. So with that in mind, what is KSM? What is Galore Creek? What is Brucejack? So KSM is the largest undeveloped gold deposit in the world. It's the third largest undeveloped copper deposit in the world. It's a massive tonnage, lower grade porphyry cluster that Seabridge Gold and Tudor Gold control. And Brucejack is an epithermal system likely related to the same mineralizing system, slightly younger, that sits adjacent to that. Brucejack is one of the highest grade operating mines in the world, run by Newmont. And this in itself is a great prize, but now with the addition of LGM, we've added a really nice Galore Creek target, the Grizzly target, that is part of this Grizzly Voigtberg Lucifer trend, we're calling it, which is about a 10-kilometer trend where you've got Galore Creek Sweet intrusions. They haven't even been put on a map yet. We've been in discussion with the BC Geological Survey here. If you go through historical logs of drill holes on the Voigtberg target, which is held by Teck and Newmont, Galore Creek Mining Corp., and then the Grizzly target, which is now ours, you see indications that it is in fact related to a Galore Age system, which is quite different than the KSM systems. I'm not going to get into the geology there, but it's a different beast, and it has potential for significantly higher copper grades, which is why we're interested in it. And at Grizzly, you've got a historical trench sample that returned 38 meters of 0.74% copper and about 1.1 grams gold. They did a little bit of drilling, about 1,500 meters there, and got some sniffs, but it looks like they drilled it wrong. We've looked at all the geophysics and mapping, and we put everything into 3D when it hasn't been done by the previous operators. And it looks like a great opportunity. We were able to pick it up fairly inexpensively. So that's what we got on our project, a big, large area. We're situated in BC, which is a mining-friendly jurisdiction. We are situated specifically in the Golden Triangle, and the Golden Triangle has a few advantages. So for one, it's without a doubt the most prolific copper-gold area in Canada, one of the most prolific in the world. But it also has much more access to infrastructure than you might think. There's a highway running through it. There's a deep water port in Stewart. There's a high-tension power line running through it. This power line and this road go through our project. But then you've also got all these other roads being pushed right now, such as the Galore Creek Access Road, the Forest Kerr Road, which goes down to SK and then is proposed to go on to SNP and to the KSM project. So there's quite a bit of development in the area. You've got clean hydroelectric power, which is one reason why I think companies like Newmont wanted to get into the Golden Triangle. It really satisfies their ESG goals, whereas a lot of other projects around the world might be running off coal power. So there is the ability to have clean gold and copper. And then really the most important reason is we're exclusively in Tahltan territory, and the Tahltan Nation are without a doubt one of the most pro-mining Indigenous groups in Canada. Incredibly well organized. They've done very well, profiting off Red Chris. Just a really entrepreneurial Indigenous group that has, I think, the largest Indigenous-owned corporation in BC. So to do this, we've got the right team in place. We've got the last winner of a Prospector of the Year award for BC with Charlie Gregg, who found the Saddle porphyry that was sold to Newmont. I think around 480 million they bought it. He also worked for the Geological Survey of Canada for over 30 years in the Golden Triangle. So he's got a really intimate knowledge of the area. And he actually worked early in her career in Gail Febo, our VPX. She worked alongside Charlie at the Bruce Jack discovery. And then she went on to do a master's degree working for Seabridge on the Monster Mitchell deposit within the KSM trend. She's worked for Galore Creek Mining Corp, Tech Newmont at Galore. So we really do have a couple of the experts in the region. But then we also have a really strong supportive shareholder base, which I'll touch on in a second. So we're a really low valued company right now with probably over 50% between institutional and ultra high net worth shareholders. We recently consolidated, and we've proven our ability to raise capital with over 22 million raised so far for early stage exploration. So to touch on the cap structure, we're now sitting at 40 million shares. That's going to go up to 43 million shares very quickly here once we get approval on the transaction we just completed for the LGM project. So we're sitting at cash balance of around 1.7 million. We just raised 2.1, but a lot of that has gone out the door to prepay for our exploration program that has started. And then we've upped a few of the warrants, but it's still not that bad with 8 million warrants outstanding. So some of the shareholders to touch on, we've got a large fund in commodity capital out of Munich, Crescat Capital out of Denver, Plethora Precious Metals out of Utrecht in the Netherlands. We've got Lowell out of Melbourne, and they're trading on the ASX. Accent Capital and Incomet are also out of Munich. Alex Gubbins, our largest shareholder, you can look at his filings on SETI. He's from Peru. And then big corporate shareholders would include Origen Royalties, who we acquired the Ball Creek East, or part of the Highway 37 project from. EMX took an earlier strategic investment in Kennerland, has been a shareholder since we acquired a couple of our gold assets. So, really strong team of shareholders, but also a very strong technical team in place. So this is where we are in the Golden Triangle. As you can see, it's a really large footprint. One thing I'll point out, though, is that not all ground in the Golden Triangle is equal. About a third of the ground you would see within this triangle isn't even prospective whatsoever. It's post-mineral cover. And then within what are marketed as prospective trends, there's a big variation. We've got clear evidence that we are in a prospective region with the right ages of rock. There's already 3 deposits with greater than 200 gram meter gold equivalent intercepts on the project, and a massive alteration trend across the project. So again, this is where we sit. You can see the breakdown of the Highway 37 versus the LGM trend. In green here, you can see the Galore Creek Road coming out here, and that little inlier there would belong to Galore Creek, and that is the Voigtberg project. So what really drew us into this area is a structural model that our VPX scale Febo presented at the Society of Economic Geologists 100th anniversary conference in Whistler a few years ago. So the Society of Economic Geologists, it's the premier journal you want to get published in for academics. Gail has been published in it. The skills she's learned doing that have really helped us with our figures that we put together. But what she highlighted was really a model, a high-level model for what's going on in the Golden Triangle. And if you look at any other porphyry district around the world, for example, if you look at Chile and Argentina, or if you look at Papua New Guinea, you'll see pretty similar things. You get overall trends, and deposits are clustered along structures that might be orthogonal to the overall trend. We're seeing that here. And, as you get further south in the Golden Triangle, you get higher up in the systems. So that's why you're seeing it favoring epithermal systems down in the, Ascot's Premier District, where there's Ascot and Scotty Gold. And then down further to the south, you've got the Kitsault District that's held by Dolly Varden Silver. But if you get further north, you start getting into more porphyry mineralization plus the epithermal mineralization. And the one thing we noticed was that there's this one lineament that really just did not have any massive, mines or huge discoveries on it yet, but there was good clues. So in the Snip Iskut district, there's already the Snip deposit, a high grade resource that Skeena Resources has been working on. Hochschild was in there for a while, but recently Seabridge Gold has been working on their Iskut project, and it looks like they're onto a discovery. They had the old Bronson Slope project that had about 187 million tons at similar grades to the KSM project. And they went and started poking around, thinking these things had some legs to them and could go to depth. And they've extended mineralization far beyond what was previously known. And they've stepped out across the valley and made a new discovery at their Iskut or North Iskut target. And we see this as further evidence for us being on a major lineament. And if you stretch down across this lineament, Enduro Metals would also be on this trend. I don't think this is necessarily controlling what you see at Red Chris, but if you look at the magnetic products from a high level, government regional surveys, it does project in that direction. It just disappears undercover. So what I'm getting at is, we're on a great structure to be on that is the least explored, but has the clues that you're there. And as I touched on, if you look at any other district in the world, you'll see similar patterns. I would urge readers to go look at Philo Mining and the Lundin Group. They put out an excellent presentation. It's called Vicuña 2.0, where they show a map like this and show how these deposits are clustered in the Andes. And you can see how, there was a gap. And that's where they found the Vicuña district. There was big deposits on either side of it, and they went and looked at a similar structural pattern. And I think the rest is history. That's turning out to be probably the deposit of a lifetime. So that's why we're there, and that's why we're really hyped up and really believe in the discovery opportunity. Another thing, this is a figure I put together that really just stresses where the opportunities are for finding another KSM. You can see these clusters on here, and these really are the locations where you could put a KSM deposit given the exact type of geology you need and the ranges of ages. So with all this in mind, I talked about being in the right place, but the scale really matters. You can see the scale of the deposits. So these are 43101 resources digitized, and you can see the outline of the Sulphurets district, which is really the analog we're going for. You can see Galore, you can see Shaft, you can see other porphyries all across BC. I'm pretty sure I've got every single porphyry that has a resource in BC on here. But then I've gone a step further, not for all of them because I don't have unlimited time, but I've digitized the alteration footprints for the Sulphurets district. There's also the Kemess North project, and then ours. We don't have a resource yet, but we do have indications of mineralization, such as large-scale geochemical anomalies and broad areas of alteration. And, when you're looking for one of these systems, you need to be looking for a target that is of that scale. If we were looking for a postage stamp, focused in on something tight, you're never going to find something big. That's why if you're looking for a porphyry exploration company and they've got a little postage stamp, they're probably not going to find something. So you need to look big, and that's what we're doing here. And all the indications point towards there being a new district on this project. So that really covers, what we're looking for. This is what we're trying to replicate. This is just a slide showing GT Gold and showing how you don't need to put these deposits into production. You just need to come out with an exciting discovery, and it's in a market that is likely going to improve for copper and gold. You can get bought out pretty early on. They did this in a really short order. In about 4 years, they went from a soil anomaly to a big discovery at Saddle. So this is where our new project, what it looks like with the LGM edition. I've touched on this KSM trend, and you can see it stretching from our project. We've just got some rock samples on here It's pretty simplified. And then you can see this galore suite intrusive trend down to the south. What we're doing this summer is we're doing a Z10 survey that's going to cover pretty much the entirety of this Texas Creek intrusive complex. And it's going to fingerprint, or we hope it's going to fingerprint the known deposits on our project. So at Mary, you've got 290 meters of about 0.7 gold equivalent. At Williams, you've got 350 meters of about 0.9 gold equivalent. So there's already good systems there. At Rainbow, they drilled about 90 meters of 0.75 gold. So we have mineralization, and we're flying this airborne survey at a fairly tight line spacing with the hopes of fingerprinting these systems and looking elsewhere for similar signatures. And how we're going to do that is, so we've already started, and I think we're going to get our first look at the model this week with the Verify team. We've already started on a machine learning process. There's a lot of data on this project. So we're able to fingerprint these systems and look where you get similar characteristics across the project. The advantage of machine learning is it's unbiased. We've got a small team and small budgets, so it's a really efficient way to do this. There's things it's probably going to see that we're not seeing. Trace elements, things like that, proximity defaults, things that aren't super easy for a geologist to do, but a computer can do fairly easily. So the goal is to have a model now, and then we're going to get data as it comes in over the summer. The first bit of data that's going to come in is going to be the Z10 survey. So the hope with that will be to come up with new targets. And then later on in the summer, we're going to go out there and hit the ground with an excellent mapping geologist we had last year, Dr. Stephanie Sikora. She did a PhD at Codes in University of Tasmania on the Lahire project down in the South Pacific. And she's worked all over BC and the Andes on porphyry, copper, gold, and epithermal gold silver systems. We had her out there last year, and she did some great work mapping at Hank. So we're going to have her following up on all these targets. We've got Alex Walcott, who he's an IP specialist who's worked exclusively, or well, not exclusively, but worked a lot with Charlie Gregg on porphyry, copper, gold systems. So he's going to have his team out there doing IP across the best targets, and we hope that this is going to lead to new drill targets. We hope we can, expand upon the known systems, see if there's fault offsets, or if we're just missing something in the data so far, and we can find really what's driving these systems. But we also expect to find new targets because these deposits occur in clusters. If you look back at the KSM district, there's several of them across this trend, and they've got numerous other targets they've generated from Z10. They're probably not going to drill those targets from Z10 because I think they've reached their market cap peak based on discovery. They're at the de-risking development stage, but we're at a sub $10 million company right now. So if we make a discovery, we can do very well and make our shareholders a lot of money. And I think I'll leave it on that, and we can go to questions. If anybody wants more detail, just flip through our presentation and feel free to reach out to me.
We're going to start off with some audience questions. How does a silica undersaturated deposit differ with respect to the copper-gold ratio?
So in a silica undersaturated system, you're going to have substantially higher, or at least with Galore as an example, in the Golden Triangle systems, you've got quite a bit higher copper to gold. They still have high gold, though. It's just the ratio gets tweaked a bit, whereas in the Texas Creek Age systems, they're generally have a lot more gold relative to copper. That being said, the hearts of the really hot potassic cores of those systems in the KSM trend do have quite a bit of copper. You're getting intercepts in the 0.75 kind of range over a few hundred meters. So both can produce a lot of copper, but in general, Galore has a bit more. Galore systems, though, are often a bit smaller, and they're definitely more complicated, which is why more haven't likely been discovered. One thing that's interesting about the Galore systems is the upper levels of them are very structurally controlled, so they can occur as pretty narrow bodies, which is what we're seeing at Grizzly. At Grizzly, we like the fact that it's narrow at surface and you've got a big magnetic anomaly at depth with chargeability pointing in that direction. So, when Gail looked at the data, she's like, this looks very similar to her work of mapping at Galore. This is getting pretty technical, but what's interesting about these systems is the viscosity of the magma is quite different, and it's less viscous, so it's less eruptive, and it can actually exploit little cracks and faults. And that's one thing at Galore, you get really low angle mineralization because there might be a thrust fault, which would say be at 30 degrees, and it can just come up a thrust fault. So they're quite different, but finding a Galore Creek would be anybody's dream.
Thank you. And then what are the costs of ZTEM and IP survey? Can you provide the timeline for ZTEM, IP, and sampling? Is there a possibility to drill this year depending on results?
Yeah, so the ZTEM survey, it's around $100 a line kilometer. But then given where we are in the world, we have to factor in a pretty healthy contingency for standby time. Where we are in the Golden Triangle is a lot sunnier and better weather than elsewhere. I know that we're sharing the mobilization costs with another company right now that's doing a 3,000 line kilometer survey. Ours is about 1,250 for reference. I don't know who that is. They can't share that, but I'm pretty sure it's Skeena on their Hoodoo project, which is mostly covering an ice sheet. So as you could imagine, flying over an ice sheet as the temperatures are warming, you're going to get a lot of sublimation, and there's going to be a lot of moisture. And that survey has been pretty delayed. We were hoping to be going by now, but they've got another 10 days to go. So the minute they're done, we'll be flying our survey, and our survey should take less than 10 days. So it should be done sometime mid-July, hopefully. And normally you'd wait about a month at least to get an inversion done and to have a geophysicist look at it. Luckily, we work very closely with Alex Walcott, and he's offered to run it for us very quickly. Like we'll get it done basically the day we have the data. They'll be working on it, and we'll just sit down with him for a full day and go through our entire database. And he's really good. A lot of geophysicists think a little too much about geophysics and don't think about exploration, but he's amazing in that regard. And, he'll actually be able to think about things in the discovery context. So with all that in mind, there's still a chance to drill this year. I'm definitely not committing to it because there are a lot of moving parts here right now. And then additionally, with the money we just raised, it's not enough money to drill in the Golden Triangle. So we would have to do another raise in order to drill. But the key for us this year is we just consolidated the company. We don't want to race into anything and waste money. We want to be very smart about this. We've basically got a fresh start as a company. So we want to be methodical in how we test these targets and make sure we have as much information and de-risk these targets in advance. So the focus here is getting good targets, and then we move to drilling.
Thank you. So then we had an audience question about what percentage would you anticipate drilling porphyry versus epithermal, but I guess it will depend.
That will definitely depend on the targets that come out of all the work. But I can guarantee that when we go to drill, we're going to be testing epithermal targets and porphyry targets. The Hank system definitely needs more work. There's a lot of potential there, but we also think there's probably a porphyry at depth underneath it. So it's a lot of the porphyry epithermal systems are intimately associated. Give me one sec here. I've got a good diagram in our presentation I can show. This is a porphyry epithermal model tailored to our project. So you can see on here, you've got broad phyllic halos, and if you look over here at these big orange zones, that's what these would be. So it's pyrite alteration that sits outboard of a porphyry, which would sit at depth here. Everything is related to erosion. If you've got, if this is how it formed originally, but if it's eroded down to this level, then you're not going to see epithermal mineralization. You're just going to see porphyry mineralization. One thing with the Golden Triangle is you've got a lot of topography. So you might be able to see both. You might be able to see a porphyry in the valley bottom and an epithermal system on top. We see both across the project. We see porphyries on tops of mountains. We see porphyries in the valley bottoms. We have epithermal targets in the valley bottoms, and we have epithermal targets higher up. This all has to do with faulting and displacement across the project. But the key is, these systems are related. So theoretically, you could drill through an epithermal system and gain a lot of knowledge that could help you actually target a porphyry system. And if you look at Brucejack, I know at Brucejack, they did drill a porphyry target underneath it. I don't think they hit good enough grade, but they did intersect porphyry mineralization directly underneath Brucejack. Who knows if that's what's creating Brucejack or if it's the actual KSM systems that's creating it. I don't think they understand that yet, but you can see the relationship. They're right next to each other. Sulfurettes deposit at KSM has epithermal veins on top of it that are incredibly high grade. So, the transition from epithermal to porphyry can be a kilometer, but it can also be a few hundred meters.
And then we have a question about Hank. Is Hank permitted for drilling this year?
So Hank should be permitted any day now. It's been a bit of a delay here. I know the mines office, we've been in communication with them, and we were told a few weeks ago that we were, a couple points down the list. We already paid a reclamation bond. When you get a request to pay a reclamation bond, it means you're going to get your permit. It's just, it's government, so there's a lot of delays, and I don't think the BC Mines office is that well staffed relative to how many companies are operating here. So there is a bit of a wait, but I think any day now.
Thank you. And just a question about LGM and Highway 37. I think you've touched on the structural connection between the two. Have you seen the same from the geochem and looking at the clusters of mineralization, how it's the one? I think you had the slide with the circles of the clusters.
I'll go back to that one sec. Okay, so there's this broad trend here we've defined that has what are called Texas Creek intrusives. And they're mapped in the BC government data down in here. You've got Snowball Project that Evergold was drilling a while ago that has mineralization related to them. And then they've actually mapped them down in this area. But if you go through the data, there's this particular mineral called pseudoleucite that you only get in Galore Creek systems, and you only get towards the top of the systems. And it's noted in logs at Grizzly and on the Voigtberg cluster right here. If you go back in old logs, there's NovaGold geologists from when NovaGold held Galore that are describing this. There's lots of evidence for this, so it's quite distinctly different. And we've actually got the BC Geological Survey is going to be on our project for a week this summer, and doing age dating, where we're going to get a lot of free work done. And this is one area they're definitely going to want to go to. But with the trends and the geochem in mind, there's just a lot of unknowns in this area. There hasn't been much work. In this southern area here, we've got some really interesting geochemical anomalies that are open-ended. And then down in this area, there was a glacier down a valley here that would be right on this trend. If you project the fault running through the Hank Williams Valley, which is likely, the same structure that you get at the McClymont Fault down on Enduro's ground. It's all part of this major corridor. When you get these corridors, they're not necessarily perfectly linear. They can have step overs, and they can be a broader zone of deformation, if you will. It's really it's a broad zone of structural preparation where metal-rich fluids were able to come up during the Jurassic time. But there was a glacier down at this end here where they took float samples right out of the edge of the glacier up to 0.9, maybe 9.94 or so copper. And it's receded 1.5 kilometers since the last sample was taken. The last sample was taken in 1991, I believe, by Skeena Resources. That company's been around a while. So there's a lot of potential that we don't have the same level of soil coverage, for example. So it would be hard to show that trend from that standpoint. But stream sediment geochemistry highlights that. Down in Lucifer, we've got a stream sediment anomaly, very comparable to what we've got at Hank, up to over 7 grams in streams. And they haven't really sussed that out yet. Very little drilling, just over, I believe, 4,000 meters on the LGM project. So it's more virgin ground, but it's on it's very prospective. And we just need to get let loose on it.
All right, thank you. And the Galore Sweet Intrusive Complex, is that unique to LGM, or does that continue onto Highway 37?
So it doesn't exist on Highway 37. the Williams system, when Golden Ridge made that discovery, people thought it was maybe even a red Chris system. It did not look like a normal Texas Creek system, but then they age dated it and it came back at 188 million years, which would fit within the Texas Creek or KSM equivalent age group. That little area of Galore sweet intrusions down on the southern end there of LGM, that's the only location it pops out. There's a few other locations around the Golden Triangle where they pop out, but the only intact systems, and when I mean intact, I mean they haven't been scoured by glaciers and eroded down to their roots. The only intact systems would sit on the Galore Creek ground, the Enduro ground, and then this area right here. So yeah, it's unfortunately there aren't more of these systems because they're very prospective, but they're also complicated. You really need an expert like Gail to unravel these. They're far more complicated to explore for than and poorly understood than the Texas Creek systems. Partly because there's only one known example of a deposit, of a big deposit.
Got it. Thank you. And then we have another audience question. When is the latest you could drill in the season?
So last year we were drilling until about, I think, October 17th. And I think we could have continued going. It was just limited by funds. So October 31st is as long as the permit will allow in its current form. But yeah, you can drill through October where we are. Not everywhere in the Golden Triangle. Down by Stewart, you're probably dealing with snow by late September. And we might have snow too, but it generally melts. It's a lot sunnier on the eastern side of northeastern side of the Golden Triangle. If you go up to Dees Lake, they don't get much snow at all.
Thank you. And then right now, do you have a sense of what's like the highest priority area at LGM? And then, I think the release mentioned like Grizzly, Lucifer, Hank Williams, potential continuation. Like, do you have a sense of what's the top priority right now before, all the results come in?
Grizzly, definitely. Yeah. That's what really caught my eye during due diligence. It just looks like it hasn't been tested. It looks pretty wide open. Galore's been doing some work. Galore, being Tech Newmont, has been doing some work on Voigtberg, which looks like it's part of the same system. The difference between their part of it and our part of it is they don't get those copper grades. They get decent gold grades, and it's a pretty big gold anomaly, and they've definitely put more holes into it. But one thing I just noticed on a call the other day is like, we figured all the drilling was done in the wrong direction, and they're very shallow holes, and just a couple of them at the Grizzly area. You look at Voigtberg, and they've hit on all their holes, and they're done in the direction we had proposed. So it's pretty easy to potentially write off a target if the wrong team is on it.
What areas are permitted at LGM for diamond drilling?
So the Grizzly area is permitted, and that Lucifer area is permitted, and then another area off to the east of Lucifer is permitted as well. That the continuation of the trend from the Texas Creek trend, that part is not permitted, but if we found something interesting there, we could have it permitted by next season, no problem.
Got it. Thank you. Last question from me before I hand it over to Deb for more questions. So ZTEM, has that been used at either one of the properties before, and why is that your tool of choice for now?
It has not been used on either project. So there's some magnetics coverage. There's some much earlier airborne electromagnetic technology that was done on say Grizzly has a pretty interesting aeromagnetic or airborne electromagnetic feature that we're interested in, but it doesn't have like the depth penetration. It's not really a 3D product like ZTEM. So ZTEM hasn't been done anywhere on the project. We've got good mag coverage, and we've done a lot of work with a very smart geologist, Dan Core of Fathom Geophysics, interpreting it. But there's definitely gaps. Hank, for example, only has partial mag coverage, and then there's no electromagnetic. So ZTEM has been used across the world for porphyry systems. It's modeled Pebble very, very well. Pebble's got post-mineral sedimentary cover, and the system actually dips like this underneath the cover, and the ZTEM modeled it perfectly. Cobre Panama, which has unfortunately been shut down, First Quantum's project in Panama that has lit up like a Christmas tree with ZTEM. KSM has used ZTEM. I guess they're using it probably at Skeena's project. I can't confirm, but looks like it's being used over there. ZTEM is a great tool. Mobile MMT is another one you can use. We went with ZTEM because we could get it way cheaper. It was about 2/3 the cost this year. So that's why we went with it. It's not a huge difference in the technology. Ultimately, what you're looking for is footprints of huge mineral systems and the roots of them. So it might be a resistive feature, it might be a conductive feature. It all has to be taken into the context of geology. That's why you can't just do this with a geophysicist. You need an exploration geologist looking at this data. But the goal is to find what's really the plumbing of these systems. And it's a good screening method because you can fairly efficiently cover a large area of ground and find new targets. One thing I'll just add to that is, where we're at in the Golden Triangle, people talk about the red line. And the red line is the unconformity between the older Stuhini volcanics and the slightly younger Hazelton volcanics. And right around that time, when the Stuhini was eroded and there was a period where there wasn't any volcanic activity, and then Hazelton was deposited, that's why there's an unconformity, a break. Right around that time is when most of these porphyry deposits formed. And I've seen some companies pitch the red line in areas where they don't have Jurassic mineralization, which is ridiculous because it really has nothing to do with that. All it really is you're up, if you're seeing the red line on your project, you've got the right time period of rocks, eroded. If you're way up in Hazelton, it's going to be like a couple kilometers to get to that area, and you're not going to be able to sense it even with any technology. It's just going to be drilling absolute wildcat holes. And if you're below, way below it in Stuhini, it might be too deep. They might be fully eroded. So where we're at, we've got little slivers of Hazelton on the project. So it means we're like right at that perfect level. But ZTEM will see through the Hazelton if there's something underneath there. So it's a very effective technique for a project like this.
Thank you. And we just another question come in. Would you plan more work on the southern side of the Mary Zone or Cliff, or the Gold Range property?
So Mary, yeah, that's a high priority for us. We're really excited to see the ZTEM results over that. The footprint there is huge. So we do believe there's a very large system there. We just need another vector into it. Drilling long holes is expensive for a company of our size. So we need to really de-risk that before we go back to it. Cliff is part of that system. It was a bit of a head scratcher last year. ME across the valley is a huge copper anomaly that's only seen a couple drill holes that needs more work as well. So we'll take the ZTEM first and determine if we're going to do more IP in these locations. Gold Range is on hold right now, partly because there's no commitment there. I believe it's about a decade we've got the claims in good standing, so there's zero holding cost. So we can wait out. Like a lot of investors in Kingfisher probably believe gold's going to go to 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000. In that market, Gold Range could really, it could be a valuable asset to vend to somebody and use that money for non-dilutive exploration at Highway 37. We're focused at Highway 37 because that's where our skill set lies. When we started the company, it was too expensive to get a big package in the Golden Triangle. We've been able to do that, and I think we're on the path to becoming really the premier copper gold exploration, early stage company in the Golden Triangle. So that's our focus. Yeah.
I have a couple questions for you, Dustin. So, Tibber, we haven't seen news flow out of this project for a while. Why are you restarting work now, and what's your exploration target at the project?
So we did do a little bit of work last summer, and I would say the most valuable work we did was over the winter. So we had airborne magnetics flown a few years ago on the project, and we had this expert geophysicist we work with, Dan Core, give us the same products on it. We got over a small area at Gold Range and over over wherever the mag survey is at Highway 37. So he did the same work, which really pulls out structures from mag in a 3D view. And we had Gail work through that. She spent about 2 to 3 weeks this winter putting together a structural model for prospectivity on the Tibbert project. And it actually looks very similar to the Cassiar camp, where there's probably a couple million ounces just up the highway to the east of us. So we've designed a soil sampling program to test a few of these targets. The holding costs there are pretty low. I think we need to spend 100 to 120,000 this year to advance the project for the year. We haven't done a drill program there like at Gold Range, so we haven't pushed the tenure out a long ways. So we still need to do a bit of work each year. So that's what we're doing. We're not trying to take our focus away from Highway 37, but it still is a really prospective piece of ground. It's 30 kilometers of a placer district along a major terrain bounding fault. When we started the company, Gail liked the concept there even more than Gold Range, actually. There's more glacial till to deal with, so it's a little more complicated exploration, but it does have roads going through it. And if Cassiar is able to do something big, then maybe this will look good next to it. So with that in mind, yeah, minimal work, but high value, and just trying to increase our understanding and move towards being able to drill that in the future.
Then I guess the question is, are you looking to keep both Gold Range and Tibbert in the KFR portfolio long term?
No, we don't have any immediate plans, but I think like a long-term strategy would be to find some way to create value. It could be a spin out. That's easier said than done. Good CEOs are in short supply these days. But it could be that. It could be vending it to another group. I've talked with our Australian fund that's a shareholder about maybe an Australian group would be interested. Gold Range is very similar geology to the Bendigo area and the South Victoria goldfields. So maybe an Australian group would be interested in it. I think we need a bit better of a gold market for that level of exploration. But at some point, we're going to try to monetize them.
Got it. Thanks for the layup. And I didn't take it, Dustin. Can you remind us of the terms for acquiring LGM? Walk us through that.
Yeah. So 3 million shares. We based that deal when we were trading at, it was the price of the financing, so 17.5 cents. So 3 million shares and 75,000 in cash. The option was to give more in stock and no cash, but we were able to get a bit of a premium on the cash, which we had in place. So it was I wanted less dilution given we've got this fresh start, trying to keep it tight.
Yeah, maybe you could elaborate on the fresh start. You did a share consolidation earlier this year. Can you walk us through the rationale and the logistics of it?
Yeah, so the share consolidation was done for a number of reasons. One, to get the share price up. It sort of worked, but also there's a few issues. Like one, we wanted to do a raise at a slight discount initially, and the TSX wouldn't let us when we were trading at, I think we were trading at 4 cents, and we wanted to do a slight discount. And you can't do a financing at a discount when you're below 5 cents. And in this market, you really need to be able to do a financing and discount if you're an early stage explorer like us. So that was one, it kind of pushed us into a corner, but also a number of large shareholders wanted us to consolidate in the hope that it would kind of get some of the selling pressure out by reducing the number of shares in weaker hands. But also really, we've got a new focus in the Golden Triangle. So it basically is like a reboot. I know one of our shareholders and an advisor, Zach Flood, was saying this financing was kind of like getting in on an IPO.
Makes sense. One last audience question. So do you currently have any CAs signed with majors? Can you talk a little bit about that?
You definitely can't talk about that. If companies are talking about that, they're.
Could you give any indication if you have interest from majors? I guess is what they're getting at.
I've met with about half a dozen majors at PDAC. I'll say that, but I don't think the timing. We don't want to bring in a joint venture partner right now. One group expressed interest, and I said we're not in. We have the ability to raise money, so it's not in the interest. And I know a large number of our big shareholders would not want that at this point. And then in terms of maybe a strategic, I would lean more towards that down the road, though. If we can fund it right now with the institutions, I'd rather do that. And after a hopeful discovery, you bring them in on a premium, kind of like what Hercules did with Barrick.
Got it. And then I guess one last question for me. Maybe you could list some of the upcoming catalysts so investors know what sort of news flow to watch for.
Yeah, so permit obviously at Hank, Z10 will be flying pretty quickly. The verify AI targets are going to come out pretty quickly. So, Z10 will be flying in the next couple of weeks. Hank permit, it could be this week. I don't know. It could be next week. It's going to be soon. The verify AI, I would imagine we'll have a first iteration of that in the next couple of weeks. And then once Z10 goes in, we'll have another iteration, and then the mapping and all that work will happen over the summer. So that's as far as I can look right now in terms of catalysts.
Awesome. Well, that's it for me. Was there anything that you wanted to cover today that we didn't get to?
No, that was pretty extensive. So I think it's pretty good. But then again, I always stress people, reach out if you got questions. My email is in our presentation. Email me and I'll respond. Don't use our info@ email. It's full of spam.
Yeah. Groups like us, right, Dustin? Okay, well, great. Yeah, thanks for the update. And if anyone does have any questions and they can't find Dustin's email, feel free to reach out and we can connect you or set up a one-on-one. And yeah, it looks like exciting times. Thanks for the update.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks, Magda.